Welcome along to our Poppy live session. I'm really sorry I couldn't be with you on Tuesday. Unfortunately, I had a bit of an accident and tried to remove my eye, which wasn't very clever of me. And let me just see, I've got lots of messages popping up on my phone. What's going on? How many have we got on? 40, 46, excellent. So it looks like you're finding me. I just want to make sure I've got the comments showing so I can see what you're saying. There we are. Hi everyone, hi Sarah. Hi from sunny Buxton, Jane. So yeah, my eyesight still isn't brilliant because, as I say, on Tuesday, well, on Monday evening, I tried to remove my eye, which wasn't very clever of me, with a cardboard box. So I had to postpone, but here we are, we're back. I'm almost up and running. So I'll just tell you what we're going to be doing today. Now, if you're going to be painting along, this is one I did earlier of the poppy scene. We're going to be working really nice and loose. And we're going to be working wet in wet. Minimal drawing required. Yay, I hear you all say. Nobody likes drawing, so that's all good. I'm just getting this on the screen so I can see everything. There we are. Okay, wait for a few more people to join. So colour-wise, a very simple colour palette. I've already squeezed out some colours here, but you can equally use your pan paints. I just happen to have tube paints out today. So I'm going to be using, you could use Cadmium Orange. This is actually Autumn Gold, but it's very similar to Cadmium Orange. I've got Cadmium Red. That screen freezing. Something strange. My screen's frozen. My big screen's frozen, so I'm not going to see your comments unless I get up every now and again. Never mind. So where was I? Cadmium Red. I've got some Crimson Red, some Violet, and I have some Windsor Blue. We'll be using greens as well, but I like to mix my greens. So I've taken Windsor Blue and mixed it with some Cad Yellow to make this rich dark green that you see here. And a little bit of Cerulean Blue. So those are the colours. To say this is one that I did previously. I'll just move that out of the way. So all I have done is pre-stretched and taped my cold pressed watercolour paper to the board. And I've given it a coat of water to stretch it and let it dry back. That helps prevent it buckling later on once we start applying the water. Here's another couple of examples of using the same process that we're using today, using water on the paper and dropping colour into the water splashes to create some very simple effects. So there's a couple of little ditty flower ones that I've done before, and there's another poppy, large poppy one, which I then emphasise with a bit of ink pen. So you can have a lot of fun. Let me pop those out of the way. So that's our colours, that's our board. Tool-wise, I've got a standard size 14 watercolour brush, and I've got a little diddy one in case I need it. A rigger brush. Now, if you haven't got a rigger brush, then just use the finest brush that you've got, or just go up onto the point of your brush here. We're going to use that for the stems between the poppies. But you can also use a bit of twig. You could use a bamboo stick like this one. So I'll show you how to get, if you're a bit nervous about doing stems with a brush, thinking your marks might be too big, you can use a bit of twig from the garden to just drag the paint through. So we can have some fun with that as well. I'm just going to pop over to the screen and see what the comments are. It's annoying that my screen's frozen. Let me see if I can unfreeze it. Let's have a look. Could you repeat the colours, please? Of course I can. Yeah, I don't know what happened when I tried to go live in the event. Something went wrong my end, so I had to come back on. So colours, Cad Orange, Cad Red, crimson, violet, and Windsor blue. You could equally use ultramarine blue. And I've mixed my own green using Cad Yellow, Windsor blue, and a little bit of crimson. If you want a really dark green, the best way of getting it is add just a touch of crimson to your green and you'll get this really dark, rich spruce green. And I've also got a little bit of cerulean blue. Okay, so as I say, minimal drawing. All I want to sketch out very loosely is the position that my poppies are going to be in. So I'm literally just going to draw. I'm not even trying to draw poppy shapes. I'm just going to put big circles. Let's have one poppy there, another one next to it. It'll all make sense very soon. And we'll have another one coming up the top here. Very loosely, just sketching and positioning a few poppies. Let's have one facing the other way. Coming down the bottom here. Just trying to balance the composition, and just pre-sketching helps you get that balance in the painting that you're going to do, positioning where these poppies are going to go. And let's have another one up the back here. Why not? Nice and large. Little one up the back. And let's have one drooping down that's just either just dying back or just about to pop open. Have a little poppy head there, and maybe a couple around. So I'm just making those kind of cylinders just to get that shape that I want. Great. Okay, I just have to keep popping up and looking at the screen to these questions. Out and about, but wishing you a fun poppy session. Excellent. Oh, Tracy, you found me. Great. It's really annoying when technology lets you down. I was all set up ready to go at 1 o'clock on the dot, and then technical issues, but we're here now. Okay, so as I mentioned, I pre-stretched my paper, and now I've just sketched and positioned where the poppies are going to go. So this is a fun bit. I'm going to load up my big watercolour brush, just with clean water, and I'm going to sprinkle water and try and aim it at the poppies, splattering. There's a bit of blue on my brush actually. Just putting some splatters down on the page. Some of them will hit the poppies, some of them will miss, really doesn't matter. We're just getting some water down, some little puddles scattered on the surface of the paper. And now we're going to have some fun with colour. Try not to think too much about the shape of the poppies that you're doing, okay? Have fun with the colour. I do have another orange here. I've just invested and treated myself to a set of deluxe watercolours by M. Graham, and they're made with honey. And this orange in here, Azo orange, is one that I thought I might want to try out today. So I've got that squeezed out as well. M. Graham, if you're looking for a Christmas present from your other half, point him in the direction of M. Graham. They are amazing. Okay, but they're just a mixture of tubes that I've got knocking around. So I've got some Cotman, I've got some Windsor and Newton, a whole mix. So I'm wetting my brush. I'm going to start with Cad Orange. And you want your paint not too watery, quite creamy, because we've got a lot of water on the paper and a lot of water on our brush. And I'm just going to come in and I'm thinking about which side of the poppies are in shadow. And I'm going for the right-hand side being in shadow and the left-hand side being the brighter colours. So I'm just going to take my orange. I'm going to find a puddle of water, push my brush against the paper and swoop it around. Just placing the orange where I want it in the poppy head. And again, just put broad marks, pull, create shapes. A little bit more pigment there. So my paint's fairly thick because of the amount of water that we've already got on the paper. And you'll see when your brush hits the water, it will thin out and it will give you lighter colours. So here, there wasn't so much water on the page. Here, there was more. So I've got slightly different variations in colour. Pop that brush head against the paper and create some shapes. And come into this poppy head here. Load with a bit more water on my brush. And I'm focusing the orange mainly on the left-hand side of these poppy heads. Just drag that round. We're working loose. Don't feel yourself getting too tight and too stressed. I'm sure one of the things that you guys liked about the look of this demo today was the fact that it's nice and loose. I'm just moving that orange around, getting those first colours down. Sorry, I do have to keep popping up to see these comments. You can participate later. Can you spray it? I wouldn't spray it. I wouldn't spray it necessarily because you're going to get too fine a mist and you want some clumps of water, some puddles, rather than a fine mist. Okay, I'm going into Cad Red next. Just adding some water to that tube paint. As I say, you can use your pans as well, but mix it nice and creamy. I'm going to come in and I'm going to overlay the orange. In places, I'll drop into the orange. Just use the shape of that brush, leaving a bit of a gap in the centre of that one. Using the shape of the brush, the brush head to push your paint around, popping it onto the orange so it mixes wet in wet. It doesn't matter if they touch and bleed together in this style of painting, let it happen. Just remember to leave some centres showing. Tap it into the orange. I'm not painting big broad strokes, I'm tapping my brush on and laying it and just moving it, jiggling it around. Let's come into the right hand side of this poppy. Here we go. Let it mix with the orange. It looks a mess before it looks better. And some more. And this is a little poppy head. I'm going to create a bit of, this is Cadmium Red. Just dropping it in, on top of, mixing it in between. And if you want to, you can go back to your orange. I might try a little bit of this M. Graham orange here, this bright orange. Oh, wow. It's very powerful colour. You can go back in again, take some more orange into the red. So very loose, a couple of the poppies, I've left the centres open. I've left the centres open so we can pop in some of those dark colours, the violets and blues, into the middle of our flowers. But let's carry on and introduce another colour. So we've got our Cad Orange, we've got our Cad Red, and now I'm going into this rich crimson. Again, mixing it to a nice creamy consistency. We want powerful colours here. We don't want them too washed out. And again, just using the tip of my brush, I'm just going to tap in. When you push down with your brush in watercolour and lift off, you will leave a puddle of colour. It will give you much more saturation than spreading it around too much. So just tapping down on top of that red. Whoops. A little splatter of paint there, but that doesn't matter. Pick up some more of that crimson. I'm just focusing on the right hand side of my poppies. Where shall I go next? Just making those decisions as you go. I'm going to come down this side. I'm going to extend that poppy a bit wider. You can start to see these colours mixing together on the surface of the paper. I'm just tapping, literally just pushing that brush down and lifting up and leaving that puddle behind. So I get a really strong, vibrant colour. I just need to squeeze a little bit more of the crimson into my palette because I accidentally picked a big blob of it up that's hit the page, but we'll leave that there. Okay, bit more crimson, darken this little poppy at the side, add a bit of colour to the one over here. And as I say, each time, guys, I'm just tapping that colour on. Okay, now for some interesting colours. I'm going to bring some of the violets in and some blues into the poppy heads themselves. Okay, so the blue that I've chosen is Cerulean, which is quite a light blue. Clean your brush out, pick up some paint, add some water, make it nice and creamy. You can be going from your pans into your mixing palette, and I'm going to pop some of this light blue using the tip of my brush into where the centre of the poppy head's going to be. Some of them have been blocked out with the orange. I'm just going to pop that blue straight over the top. See what happens as it mixes with the orange and the reds beneath it. I don't want too much of this light blue, just a hint here and there, just in those ones. And now into the violet. Love this colour. So this one is actually, it's a Cadmium, and it's dioxine purple or dioxine violet. I'm going into the centre of the poppies where I've just been with that blue and just tapping with the tip of my brush some very strong creamy paint, tapping it down over the top of the blue, creating some real darks around the centres of these poppies. Some of it, because we're working wet in wet, may bleed into the poppies. Just go with it, let it happen. Nice and creamy, with a nice wet brush. Where should I go now? Let's pop some in here. And we'll add centre to the poppy. You'll see what happens when you're working wet in wet. That paint that you've put down is going to bleed out. It's going to move in the water and it's going to create that lovely loose look that we're aiming for today. I'm going to add some more violets later on as well, but for now I'm just going to come into these centres. I want the wet in wet paint to start drying back a little bit, just a little, before I start putting some more purples over the top. Okay, whilst that's happening, we're going to put some of the stems in. Okay, and we're going to work wet in wet with the stems as well. Now you can use your rigger brush, you can use a fine watercolour brush, or as I mentioned, you can use a bamboo stick or a twig from the garden. Let me show you the stick. So you do need to get it dipped right into that paint, pick it up on the end, and just decide where you want a stem, tap it into the bottom and drag that down and let it come out behind the poppy. And let's go to this one. Just going to pop that green. This is the green that I've mixed with Windsor Blue and Cad Yellow, and just pull that stick down, pick up a bit more paint, pull it down, and you'll get a fine stem, okay? So sticks are really good if you are worried about doing a fine line. I'm going to move to my finer brush. Again, your green paint needs to be creamy. And some of these, I want the green to actually enter the flower. So here on the poppy head, I'm going to pop this green right into the base of the orange. And if it bleeds in, that's all good. I'm just going to pull out from that poppy head and flick down Make that stem a bit bolder. Come for the poppy head over here. Take that green right into the reds and oranges and let it bleed into the head of the poppy. Pull away, come around, just flick. Get the tip of your brush against that page and just flick downwards. I find it easier to come from the flower and pull down rather than go up. I'm going to come into this one here, put a big blob of green there, and then flick down, have some more coming up. Have fun with it. Time to time, I'm just going to let it pass through the flower. My paint's drying out quite quickly today. It's not that warm in here. Okay, let's make sure each poppy head is attached to a stem. Again, here I'm popping this green right over the red. When green mixes with red, it gets really dark. So you get this really rich green coming through. Coming under that poppy head there. All through. And if there's some puddles where you splattered earlier, your paint's going to hit those puddles and it's just going to splatter out. It's just going to be more loose. Okay, I want a lot more stems going on and I want some sense of some leaves as well. So I'm going to take my brush, place it at the side of one of these stems and just jiggle it around. Literally just pushing it up and down, creating some interesting leaf shapes. Sometimes it's going to hit one of my splatters and the paint will spread out. Just here, the greens hit into the red of the poppy and bled down, back down the stem. That's beautiful. I love it when those happy accidents happen. And let's bring a few more stems. Nice and light touch. Rest your hand down if you want to steady it. And there's one I've missed. This big poppy head here. I'm going to have this one coming out there. Okay, now I want to carry on with the wet in wet technique and add some more colours to the green. I want to emphasise the bleeding that goes on. This bit here where the red's bled down that stem, it's darkening the stem, making it look stunning. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to add some more colours in. I'm going to pick some of my violet up and I'm going to pop that at the top of the stem into a leaf and then just leave it there. Nice and wet, creamy paint, wet brush, tap that purple on top of the green. Watercolour loves to follow water. It's what it does. So as you tap it into the top of the stem, it's going to bleed down and infiltrate the colours below. You could also do that with your crimson. So let's do some crimson. Just watering it down a bit, but it's nice and creamy still, and my brush is wet. I'm going to come in, where shall I go? Choosing where to go, into the bottom of this stem. Just tap it on and let that paint get sucked in. By adding some purples and reds into the green, not only does it darken them, but it kind of pulls your colourway together. So we're picking some of the colours we're using in the poppy head and introducing it to the leaves. Adds a bit more interest. Okay, right. Let's leave. We can add some more stems later if we feel we need to. I want to talk about this bleeding edge to make it look all diffused and let the colours spread out. And apologies for the speed of working, but you do need, when you're working wet in wet, to work at a certain pace. Okay, so I'm going to take my clean watercolour brush. I'm going to come into some of this wet paint. I'm just going to tease it, drag it up from the poppy. Take some up and then go back with clean water and encourage that paint to spread out. for it to bleed more, giving this soft, diffused look. Let's pick another flower that's still wet. Drag some of that paint up and away. Then come back with just water on your brush and soften that out. Let it float away. You see how that gives you that watery, blissful look to your painting. I love working with watercolours this way. It's such fun. Okay, again, this one's still nice and wet. I'm going to take some of this colour, just pull it out to the side. You don't have to do this bit. If you prefer your poppies to be more solid and not have these wispy, mystical bits spreading around, then don't do this bit. But I love it. There we go. A couple more. Balance. I do like a bit of balance. I'm going to bring some orange out this side. It's still nice and wet. There's a little bit of green in it as well. Clean water. Approach the paint with the clean water. Creep up on the paint and introduce that clean water to that dribble of paint that you've pulled out to one side, and then just let it do its thing. Let it float. If you want a little bit more colour, don't be afraid to tap some more in, and it will follow. Watercolour's very obedient. It will follow the trail. It will look for that feed of water. I'm going to do one up here too. Coming into that wet paint, extending from the poppy. Clean water. Creep up behind it. Touch into where you've stopped. And just let that paint flow into that extra water that you've put down. It just gives that really soft, diffused look. This one looks amazing here. I'll give you a close-up in a little while and you can see what's happening there. Okay, so whilst we've been doing that, it's allowed our poppies to start drying back a little bit. They've still got a nice shine to them. So we're still going to get some wet in wet action. I'm going to go back into my purple. I realised I missed a flower head over here, one of the poppy seed heads. So I'm just going to take some purple and tap that in, tap away. There we go. And now I promise I'm going to add a bit more purple, some more violet-y colours into my poppies. A nice wet brush, because the paint is at a slightly different stage now. Look at it, look for the wetness, look for that shine on the paper. Sometimes you have to tip your paper up to see where that shine is. And I'm going to drop some purple over the dark side. And when I say drop, I use that term, and those of you that have been on my classes before are used to me using that term in watercolour. I'm tapping or dropping. Just tap some purple in the dark side into that crimson and let it bleed in that wet colour that's still down there. This one's still wet here. So tap, drop down some purple over the top. What I don't want is any hard, crisp lines forming, and that's the joy of wet in wet. You'll just get this subtle blurring going on, allowing the paint to play in these wonderful puddles of colour. Tap, pick up some more purple, see where you want those dark colours. I'm going to add a little bit to the base of this poppy head, this one that's leaning forward. And can you see, I'm not brushing it, I'm tapping and placing and nudging and teasing that colour rather than brushing backwards and forwards. Some beautiful colours now. Okay. Are you all with me? Any more comments up there? Excellent. A whole 100 of you, how exciting. Okay, so now I'm going to take a bit of tissue, just wrap it around my finger, and here and there I want to lift out a little bit of colour, just pulling off a little bit of highlight on the left-hand side, just accentuating. Be careful you don't put some of the colour you lift off back down. Just tap in where you can still see there's a bit of shine. That one's dry, so I'm not getting any lift in there. There we go. And just tap out that highlight. Now, if like me, your poppy's dried, and I really do want to lift out the side of this, you can reactivate your paint, okay? So take just a damp brush and jiggle it on top of the area you want to lift out to reactivate, and then use your tissue and gently lift off a highlight. You know how fragile poppies are and how papery thin they look when they hit the sun. That's what we're trying to recreate there. I'm just putting a little bit of orange back in. That's a bit harsh. There we are. Okay, that's the basics pretty much done. So now it's about refining your marks, adding some stronger colours here and there. So I'm going to go into my purple again. I'm going to pop into the centre of these poppies and really darken down that centre. Very rich, creamy paint. Little bit of water to keep it moving. You don't want it totally stationary. A nice creamy consistency and a nice wet brush. Just add in some extra darks to the centres, making the middle of these poppies really pop out as they do. I'm going to mix a little bit more green. I've run out of green, so I'm taking my Windsor Blue and a little bit of Cadmium Yellow. You could use ultramarine blue, not too much yellow. We want this dark. And remember what I said to make your green even darker? Touch in the tiniest bit of crimson red and look how dark and rich and lush that makes your green. Bit more yellow in there. And I'm just going to come in with a little bit of detail around the edge of this little poppy head that's not open, strengthening that green, bringing a few leaves. Nothing too precise. Some of these poppy stems where it comes under the head of the poppy, I want to widen and make the little buds. And here, so I'm just putting this creamy green down to widen that area, bring it right under the poppy there. Really strengthening those greens. Remember, your watercolours always dry back lighter than when you put them on. So don't be afraid of going dark. I'm going to go into some of those leaves as well, coming onto the tip of my brush and just creating a zigzag up and down pattern to create abstracted leaf shapes here, filling up some of that white paper, really rich and dark. And I want to add a few more. And I'm going to carry on with my big watercolour brush because it comes to such a nice point. I know that if I'm careful and I come up right onto the tip, I can bring a fine line, some extra leaves, coming in and around, just filling up the paper. Have fun with it. Have some coming out the back. But use whatever tool's comfortable for you. You can use your rigger brush. Remember, you can use a twig. You just need a little bit more paint for the twig for it to pick up that colour. Oops, I need to add a stem to the bottom of this poppy head here. I'll mist that off. Just tweaking and having a look back over the picture. I'm going to have a few more stems that come up and come down, up and pull down, up and pull down. Just some bent grasses, add a bit of interest, just come up and then tip over at the edge. Let's do one here. Trying to do it so you can see in the shot. So I'm going to pull out to the side and down. Whoops, a bit of a wiggle. Up and pull down. Just to tip that over. And it's nice sometimes to run through the poppy and let your brush pick up some of those purples and reds. And just bring those down too. I told you we're going to be working loose. Okay, how loose, how brave can you be? It's a nice quick way of working. Just don't get too hung up on the details. Right, I want to add a little bit more of this blue, cerulean blue. I'm using my rigger brush, and a rigger brush is one with, there's your normal brush with a very short head, and rigger brushes have these long tapered bristles which allow you to get fine lines. But it can also be really useful, we'll find a scrap of paper somewhere, for dry brushing to get some interesting effects. So you can just drag it across the paper and let the bumps of the cold pressed paper come forward. I just want some hints of this blue coming down the bottom. So I've not got much water on the brush, just a little bit of paint. I'm just going to drag that, let it bounce over the page, just bring some blues through. Very little paint, and just letting those long bristles bounce across the page. Just adding these flecks of blues like little blue cornflowers hiding amongst the poppies. And I find the reds, oranges and this pale blue work beautifully together. I'm going to carry on with my rigger brush, going into this pale blue again, cerulean blue. I'm just going to pop a couple of little dots of blue around the centres where we started, really creamy so it stands a chance of showing through. Just here and there, don't overdo it. Just a couple of spots of pale blue. And again, that's going to help tie the whole composition back together. Okay, a couple of last things that I like to do. I'm just going to drag a flat brush now. You could use your round brush if you want. Find some areas of paint that have still got that glisten to them. And I'm just going to flick with a dry brush, flick that paint down very lightly, pulling it through the wet paint, just creating some dry brushing marks. Just dry that brush off, just touch down and drag it through. It'll pick up that little bit of paint. In fact, I'm going to drag that blue. Can you see there? Just dry brush, a few areas. Just give that sense of movement, not too many, just a few of those. Let me bring it up to the camera. So you can see, just pulling with a flat brush, dry brush through and pulling out. And now I've got this a bit closer, you can see where we poured some colour out and added some water to soften it and let it bleed out. Some of them look beautifully like distant poppies there, softening the background. That's pretty much it. Now, if you want to add a bit more detail, a bit more colour, you could go back, add some more purples, carry on playing. I'm just going to darken that side of that poppy there. Just drop in a bit more purple. I do love the purple over the red. It gives you that rich, dark shadow side of the poppy. But I think I'm pretty much done. So, fast and furious, I know. I hope you enjoyed this session. For those of you that are new to me, haven't been on any of my classes before, please check out my events page. I teach twice a week and I use Zoom, so you can chat to me and I can chat to you, and we get to share each other's paintings at the end. I work across all mediums, so watercolour, pastels, acrylics, pencil drawings, so there's something for everybody's taste. Check out the events on Facebook, pop over to my website, have a look at some of the past events that I've done, and it's £10. Every lesson that I do is £10, and you also get the recording of every session. Okay, every session I do, I record, and whether you attend live or not, you get the recording to keep, and you can watch it as many times as you like. There's no time limit. It's there for you, because sometimes painting along can be challenging, and we all know we like to hit the pause button now and again. So you get that as well with my lessons, so check them out. And I hope to see you at a Zoom class with me soon. Let's just have a look at some of the comments, if there's any questions I need to answer. How to rewatch. You just go back on Facebook, Kim, and the videos are there. So just like you would scroll through and look for photos, just go to the videos and it will stay on Facebook forever. I may also post it to YouTube later. Thank you, Naomi. I'm glad you enjoyed it. And you, Leslie. Thanks, Meg. Oh, it's lovely. Oh, before you disappear, just a chance to plug my new watercolour book. You may have seen this on Facebook where I've been advertising it. So some of my more fun, quirky characters, I picked the 8 most popular, are in this little A5. It's a 200 GSM smooth paper. And as you can see, I tried it out. You can do watercolour on it. You can buy that on my website as well, on its own or in a little kit to give as a gift for Christmas. So check that out. Check out my classes and I hope to see you soon. Bye, everybody.